Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Maureen, and today I'm going to be sharing with you how to make a shacket, and we're going to be using this Simplicity pattern. So one, I just want to tell you this is not my first, not my second, but my third time making this shacket. The first one I made was back in 2021, and I actually have a entire pattern review for this pattern. And then I made my second one at the end of 2023. And for this final one, which is my third one, this one was done for my husband, and by request by many of you, I have decided to make a sew along for the version that I made for my husband. So go ahead and cut out that pattern and let's get into this. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to do a stitch around 5/8 of the border of your pocket, which is pattern piece number 2. And once you complete that step, go ahead and grab your pattern piece and add notches where the solid line is. This is going to help you with your fold line. Press under by 1/4 of an inch on the upper edge of your pocket. Then you are going to turn the upper edge of the outside along that fold line where we put the notches. And this is going to form a facing. You are going to stitch along the seam line of the raw edges and then trim the seam allowance to down to 1/4 of an inch and turn it right side out. Once you do this, go ahead and do a top stitch along the folded edge. Okay, now using the stitch line from earlier, go ahead and press the raw edges under. That way you can pretty much get like a perfect pocket for the front of your shacket. All right, so now that we've done the stitching for the pocket, on pattern piece number 1, you have a set of dots. You have these dots, which is where your flap will go, and then you have a lower pair of dots. I did them in red ink, hopefully you can see them, but you're gonna wanna put them on the dots that correspond with the pocket outline. So go ahead and take some pins and secure this. Now go ahead and complete 2 rows of top stitching at your machine, and you may have to widen your stitch length for this, especially if you're using a thicker fabric, so go ahead and do that now. Moving on to pattern piece number 3, one side should be interfaced, the other one you can leave blank. Place them right sides together, and at your sewing machine, stitch this down at 5/8 and then trim it. All right, once you are done sewing around your pocket, go ahead and trim that seam allowance down. Now, because I am using like a super thick wool here, I am going to press this with my clapper as well as my iron, because it's just super thick and I want it to be as flat as possible. So I'm going to turn this right side out, and then I'm going to press this really good so that we can get it ready for our top stitching. Okay, so this is super flat, like patty melt flat. So now we're going to do 2 rows of top stitching on this flap. Okay, so we're gonna grab our pattern piece number 3, and you see here you've got your marking for your buttons. It is it is really wise to do this before you attach it to the front of your shacket, because then it gets more complicated to add the buttons. And with making this twice, I've learned that mistake twice now. So I said, you know what, for my sew along, I'm gonna do this right. So here you go. Go ahead and make that marking, and then take this to your sewing machine, and with your buttonhole stitchings, go ahead and make your buttonhole. All right, so I've gone ahead and I've done the button, and I also did the hole as well, because that's also easier when nothing's attached. And so now we are going to match up those notches on the flap, and we are going to match it up to the notch that's right here at the top of the pattern piece number 1. And we are going to place this right on top of our pocket, just like this. And I like to do this at like a 3/8, because you're going to put your yoke piece right on top, and that's going to be at 5/8. So it's totally okay to do this stitch at 3/8. Once this is stitched down, go ahead and grab your yoke piece, which is pattern piece number 4, and you are going to stay stitch around the neckline here, and then right sides together. You're going to pin this, and then we are going to take it to our sewing machine and do a 5/8 stitch across. And I'm going to use some of my Wonder clips for this part, because this is going to be through all thicknesses here. So not only do I recommend widening your stitch length, but also take it slow, because you don't want to break any needles, and you also want to be safe. Okay, let's take this to our sewing machine and stitch it at 5/8. Okay, now go ahead and complete this on both sides, and also make sure that you stitch this, or I'm sorry, that you press these seams upward. You don't have to finish them, because we're going to do the burrito method to enclose all of these seams in. So just make sure that you press this upwards towards your yoke. That way your pocket flaps can lay flat, and also that this will have a nice pretty seam line here as well. All right, so let's take pattern piece number 6. So you should be looking at the top, and the way you can tell that is because you've got like a piece of your armhole here. So on this side, I have made some notches. I made a notch for the center front, and then one for the broken pleated line and for the solid pleated line. So for the solid pleated line and the broken pleated line, I'm just going to tuck this in like this on one side, and do the same on this side. And it's going to create like this little pleat here that you typically see on, like, you know, dress shirts or shackets. And then the way you can make sure that you did this right is by lining up your back yoke piece here. So if you line this up, and if it matches all the way across with armholes and notches, then you have done your pleat correctly. Go ahead and then stitch this down, and then also stay stitch the neckline of your back yoke, and you're going to want to start at the center front and work your way out on each side when you do that. After basting down your pleat, attach your yoke piece to that seam, and right sides together, stitch this down at 5/8 at your machine. Now attach your front to your back with your shoulder seams right sides together and stitch this down at 5/8. Okay, so now let's move on to our collar, which is, I believe, pattern piece number 9. And I have one piece in plaid and again, one piece in the wool. So the wool is my lining piece, I guess you can say. And then I interfaced one of them. Also, don't make fun of my interfacing. I was trying to save scraps. Yeah. Anyway, so right sides together, just like this. Okay. Okay. So we're going to sew this at 5/8, and then we're going to come back here and then trim our seam allowance. Trim the seam allowance and then turn it right side out so that way you can give it a top stitch at your machine. After giving it a top stitch, baste across the raw edge of the top. This will help keep all of the layers together. Okay, go ahead and attach your collar. Now, if you are like me and you are using something that is like a plaid, make sure that the side that you want to show is facing you. And I kind of use some chalk for some dot markings here. You want your collar to end right there where those dots are. And then of course, matching up your notches here, you want to make sure those match up as well. So go ahead and take this to your machine and sew it down. And then we're going to get started on our yoke / burrito method. Moving on to our lining pieces or our partial lining pieces, go ahead and stay stitch the necklines like how we did for our outer pieces. Now go ahead and stitch this at your machine at 5/8. Okay. So once you stitch down the shoulders, go ahead and lay this right on top of your collar, right sides together. And matching up those edges and going around those curves and those seam lines, we are going to sew through all thicknesses. Now at 5/8, sew all the way around again through all thicknesses at your machine, and then give it a really good press. Once you have finished stitching this all the way around, you may clip in the notches and curves to make this a little bit more flexible once you get into your burrito method. So you see that we have our front piece here. We are simply going to flip this piece around like this. So now you should see like the seam and everything like that. So now it's essentially right sides together. So now, like a burrito, we are just gonna roll it from the bottom all the way to the top, up past the pocket, and then we see this raw edge here. Connect this raw edge and this raw edge together. All right. Then we're going to take this to our machine and sew through all thicknesses. All right, then we are going to pull it out. And oh my goodness, y'all, look. It's enclosed on the inside and it's beautiful on the outside. So now we are going to press this seam, again using your clapper, and then we are going to top stitch this seam. And it's gonna look really, really pretty. Complete all of these same steps for the other side. Okay, now we're gonna do the same thing with our back yoke. So again, rolling the burrito from the bottom, rolling in that collar, and meeting it at that raw edge. And again, sewing through all thicknesses. Take this to the machine and sew it up at 5/8. So now we're gonna take it out of the burrito. Once you have done the burrito method on the back yoke, go ahead and top stitch it just like we did the front. Then you're going to baste the lining of your jacket along the front and the armhole edges, matching the shoulder seams and making sure that the raw edges are even. Once you've done that, we are going to make the pleats on our sleeve on the outside, and make sure to fold along the solid lines and bring those to the broken lines and baste across the raw edge. All right, so you have your armhole open, and right sides together, we are going to place this sleeve in here, matching up all your notches and curves. So we're going to take this to our sewing machine at 5/8. We will be completing this step for both sleeves. Next, once you have completed sewing down your sleeves, finish the raw edges with a serger or a zigzag stitch, and you are going to top stitch your sleeve towards the jacket. So remember, because if you're working with a really thick fabric, you're going to have to widen your stitch length and go slow across some of those seam lines because it is super thick fabric. Okay, now before you actually sew up the sides of your shacket, go ahead and attach your pocket. If you have been following a lot of my sew-alongs, then you know that I always love to serge the curve of the pocket, and then once it's attached, I will serge down the straight side. So go ahead and do this to all four sides of the pocket. Stitch it down at 3/8 at your machine, and then finish those sides. So go ahead and put your two sides together, starting with your sleeve opening here. You should have serged all of this by now. I have my clip here because that's where we're going to start sewing. We're going to pin all the way down the side around the pocket, and then we'll take this to our machine and sew it down. And this is what it should look like. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to stitch down our vent. So it's almost like how you would sew down a split in a skirt. So basically I'm just going to let the edge of the presser foot be my guide. Okay, take pattern piece number 11, which is your cuff, and you have a side with a notch, and then you have a side that's unnotched. On the side that's unnotched, do a 5/8 stitch, and then press it down like this. Then you are going to fold it again, matching your dots on each side here. And then you're going to pin on the short sides. Then you're going to take this to your machine and sew it at 5/8. Once you've sewn it down on each side, go ahead and trim the seam allowance just like this. All right, so grab your sleeve and turn your cuff right side out, poking out those corners, real pretty like. And you can also give this a good press too. All right, so matching up the edge of your cuff to the vent right here. Match it up just like this from end to end. Okay, take this to your sewing machine and sew at 5/8. Once that is finished, go ahead and enclose your raw edge. Now you can either slip stitch this close or top stitch it. It's completely up to you, but go ahead and do that now. Okay, so now we're gonna get ready to add our button placket to the front. So go ahead and finish your bottom edge hem. I did a very narrow hem down here, and you can, do your hem as wide or as small as you like. That's at your discretion. Take your button placket pattern piece, and on the unnotched side, go ahead and stitch a straight stitch at 5/8 and then press it under like you see here. Now take the side that's got that little like curve in the middle and place it at the top of your shacket. Okay, so you want this dot to be matching the front of your shacket. So place the dot, or place the pattern piece right here, matching the dot to the edge of the placket, because what you're going to do is you're going to enclose your button placket to give it like a nice finished edge. So you're leaving like about 5/8 at the top here. All right, and then you are going to pin or wonder clip in place, and you are going to have a little bit of space left over at the bottom of your placket because you did your hem. So you're going to have a little bit of space left over at the bottom here to enclose it as well. So if it goes over the hemline, you've done it right. Okay. All right, so now that we've stitched this down, go ahead and trim the seam allowance. I promise it's okay. All right, and then press the seam allowance that you just trimmed towards the placket here. That's going to be important for when we enclose everything up. So once you have pressed the seam allowance towards the placket, go ahead and press the placket right sides together, just like this. That way you can enclose the top and you can enclose the bottom. So what I'm going to do right now is put a pin at the top and put a pin at the bottom. And I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and stitch it down right here where the hem meets the placket, and stitch it down across the top here as well. And then trim that off too. Okay, once you trim these down, go ahead and turn your placket right side out and just poke out those holes a little bit with either a point turner or seam ripper or something, or your finger. And this is pretty much what it should look like. And then you want to press it again so that the placket seam allowance matches up and encloses everything in. And you're going to pin this, and I'll show you how we're going to stitch it down. Okay, so I've gone and pressed this so that way everything lays flat and we're able to enclose everything. And the way I like to pin this specific placket is I like to start it from the outside. So on the part that's going to be facing you. And I like to pin it and make sure that I'm catching the inside. So as I'm pinning, I'm going into the seam of the placket and making sure that I'm catching all thicknesses. Okay, so what I like to do, and you'll see on the instructions, they want you to stitch all the way around the entire border of the placket. There's no right or wrong way to do that, but for me personally, I like to start at the bottom, go through the side that is closest to like the pocket, go up and around, and then all the way down. The reason why I like to secure this seam first is so that it won't move, because that's the one that we need to be enclosed. This one is really kind of like for show on this side. So again, down on the bottom edge, on the right side, across the top, and down the left. So we're going to do that at our sewing machine right now. Once you have finished top stitching your placket, go ahead and add your buttons and make your buttonholes per your machine instructions and guidelines. In my opinion, it doesn't matter what side you put your buttons and your buttonholes on, just as long as they're on there. And enjoy your shacket. All right, you guys, now if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and comment below. And if you're not following me already, you can follow me at Raven Maureen on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. I'll see y'all next time. Bye.